tells me that it wasn't just the Baltimore Ravens. It was 3 teams: the Cleveland Browns, the Philadelphia Eagles, and it also was Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is where the perspective gets skewed, because why would Shedeur not want to go to Baltimore? If any team has been on the cutting edge of saying we figured out the recipe of drafting and developing good players to play great and elite, that's one of the teams that does it at a high level. Why not?
Imagine NFL owners, billionaire titans who control stadiums, TV networks, and entire cities, suddenly sweating like rookies under stadium lights. Why? Because one young quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, just flipped their perfect little script upside down. The NFL draft was supposed to be their night of power. Players sit, wait, and thank the teams that picked them. But this year, Cam Newton dropped a bombshell so explosive it rattled boardrooms and cigar lounges alike. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just sitting quietly. He was rejecting teams. Think about that for a second. The tradition has always been the same. Rookies cry on stage, hug grandma, and smile for the cameras no matter what jersey gets shoved into their hands. But Shedeur said no. Not once, not twice, 3 times. And suddenly, the men who build billion-dollar franchises realized they weren't the ones calling all the shots anymore.
No reports came out in the midst of the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns game on Sunday that Adam Schefter reported that Shedeur Sanders declined the option to be drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in the 5th round at the 141st pick. And a lot of people had a lot to say, and Cam Newton was on ESPN First Take, and he stated his position on what he thought about Shedeur Sanders declining that option.
Cam Newton's revelation wasn't just gossip. It was a grenade lobbed straight into the heart of the NFL machine. Sanders had the confidence, the audacity, and the vision to tell powerhouse franchises like Baltimore and Philadelphia, thanks, but no thanks. That's not arrogance. That's leverage. And it sent shockwaves across the league. What happens when a rookie refuses to bow his head and play the role of a grateful backup? What happens when a 22-year-old quarterback treats billion-dollar franchises like desperate Tinder matches, swiping left on the wrong situations? That's not just bold, it's revolutionary. This isn't just about Shedeur Sanders. This is about the future of the NFL. Because if one rookie can flip the script, what's stopping the next wave from doing the same? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on the moment that made billionaire owners panic, sent analysts scrambling, and might have changed draft night forever. When Cam Newton decided to speak, he didn't whisper, he detonated. On his podcast and later on national TV, Newton revealed that Shedeur Sanders didn't just fall to Cleveland. No, Shedeur actively rejected 3 NFL franchises on draft night. For decades, we've been told draft night is sacred, untouchable, and predictable. Players smile, shake hands, and thank the team that blessed them. But Newton's bombshell tore through that illusion like a blitz no quarterback could escape. He claimed it wasn't just about Baltimore or Philadelphia. It was bigger. These weren't throwaway teams hoping to build for the future. These were organizations with money, power, and reputations that usually leave rookies begging for the chance to wear their jerseys. And Shedeur? He sat there calmly, saying no.
An organization that is not good at developing quarterbacks. Ownership hasn't been good. Team hasn't been good. You get bad habits. And I think being in a good organization and understanding top to bottom would have been more important. But I think he'll get a chance. I just don't know if you get a chance for a bad team, then people say, yep, see, told you, he couldn't play.
Well, see, with that, hearing that he did not want to go to the Baltimore Ravens was a definite head scratcher. But when you have certain other details about that situation come out, when he does have the utmost respect.
Newton didn't frame it as arrogance. He painted it as strategy, a chess move in a league full of checkers. He said Shedeur wasn't reckless. He was calculated, protecting his career before it even began. To the outside world, it looked shocking. even disrespectful. But from Newton's perspective, it was genius. And here's the twist. NFL owners are not used to rookies with leverage. They're used to control. They decide the contracts. They decide the depth chart. And they decide the storylines. But Shedeur flipped the script. Instead of bowing to the system, he turned draft night into a negotiation table. And billionaires don't like being negotiated with. In that single moment, the balance of power shifted. The media rushed to label him spoiled. Old school analysts wagged their fingers, saying he should have been grateful. But the truth? Newton had cracked open the real story. Shedeur Sanders was playing by rules the NFL didn't even know existed. ... Asterisk ... And be encouraged. Now that I think about it, I might be in no hurry, but that's very soon.
More evidence and more facts have come out that it wasn't just the Baltimore Ravens that was on the clock to pick Shedeur Sanders. I said this to you guys in the previous video. Why come we haven't heard about the teams that didn't want to select Shedeur Sanders? Now, all of a sudden, 4 or 5 months later.
And that was the moment the league realized this wasn't business as usual. This was disruption. This was rebellion. And the chaos was only just beginning. The bombshell was shocking enough, but the real drama unfolded when the names of the teams Shedeur Sanders rejected started leaking out. And trust me, these weren't bottom-dwelling, irrelevant franchises. These were powerhouse organizations. Teams that most rookies would sell their souls to join. And Shedeur? He swiped left without hesitation. First up, the Baltimore Ravens. On paper, it sounded like a dream scenario. Sit behind Lamar Jackson, a former MVP, soak up wisdom, and eventually step into the spotlight. That's the script the league tried to sell. But Shedeur saw through it. He knew that no matter how well he played, he'd never truly get his shot while Lamar was locked in as the face of the franchise. Why sign up to be a stunt double when you've already proven you can be the star? Baltimore offered respect, but it also offered a dead end. And Shedeur wasn't about to waste years of his career holding a clipboard. Then came the Philadelphia Eagles, another powerhouse, another so-called opportunity. Except it wasn't. With Jalen Hurts freshly signed to a mega deal and locked in as the leader of that team, Shedeur knew his destiny in Philly would be no different than Baltimore. Endless waiting, endless shadows, endless obscurity. The Eagles probably thought they were doing him a favor, blessing him with the chance to wear midnight green. But Shedeur saw it for what it was. A long-term sentence on the bench. Respecting Hurts didn't mean sacrificing his own career. And finally, the whispers of a third franchise. Depending on who you believe, it was a team like the Ravens or even the Browns before Cleveland finally became his landing spot. Whoever it was, the truth remained the same. Shedeur didn't want to be trapped behind an untouchable starter. This wasn't entitlement. This wasn't arrogance. It was clarity. He looked at the board, saw the future, and refused to settle. For the NFL old guard, it was blasphemy. For Shedeur... And finally, the whispers of a third franchise. Depending on who you believe, it was a team like the Ravens or even the Browns. It was common sense, and that's when the panic started spreading. If one rookie quarterback had the courage to reject the system, what would stop the next? The second Cam Newton's revelation hit the airwaves, the NFL machine went into overdrive. Analysts, insiders, and talk shows lit up like fireworks, and almost all of them had the same reaction. Panic disguised as outrage. Suddenly, Shedeur Sanders wasn't a bold rookie making a smart decision. He was entitled. He was spoiled. He was disrespectful. The narrative flipped in real time, and the media painted him as a villain for doing what owners have been doing for decades. Protecting their own interests. That's the NFL's playbook. Control the story, frame the player, and remind everyone who really holds the power. Except this time, the script didn't stick. Because Cam Newton wasn't whispering rumors. He was stating facts. And when he backed Shedeur, the conversation shifted. Instead of sounding like arrogance, Shedeur's move looked like strategy. He wasn't ducking competition. He was showing respect. Respect for Lamar Jackson, for Jalen Hurts, two quarterbacks who had already earned their kingdoms. Why sit in the shadows waiting for disaster when you could carve your own path elsewhere? But that didn't stop the firestorm. Former players piled on. Alex Smith wagged his finger, warning that Shedeur was throwing away his chance. Old school voices thundered about paying dues and being humble. Social media exploded into chaos. Half of the fans praised Shedeur as a visionary, rewriting the rules. The other half roasted him as a rookie who thought he was bigger than the game. And in the middle of it all, the NFL owners. For once, they weren't smirking in their skyboxes. They were sweating. Because if Shedeur Sanders could turn draft night into a negotiation table, what's stopping the next wave of rookies from doing the same? If one quarterback could refuse billion-dollar franchises like bad Tinder dates, what's stopping an entire generation from demanding the same leverage? That's why the media attacked so hard. They weren't just defending tradition, they were defending control. And the moment Shedeur tore up that script, the balance of power shifted. If Baltimore and Philly represented dead ends, then Cleveland represented pure chaos. And to most rookies, chaos means disaster. But to Shedeur Sanders, it looked like the one golden opportunity to write his own story. The Browns aren't known for stability. In fact, they've spent the better part of 2 decades cycling through quarterbacks like they were disposable coffee cups. One year, it's a promising rookie. The next, it's a washed veteran. And by mid-season, fans are already chanting for the backup. It's a revolving door so wild, it makes other franchises look like dynasties. To many analysts, being drafted by Cleveland is a curse, a career killer. But to Shedeur, it wasn't a curse. It was a chance. Think about it. In Baltimore, he'd be buried under Lamar Jackson's shadow. In Philly, he'd vanish behind Jalen Hurts. But in Cleveland, the bar for quarterback success is so low, it's practically underground. All he needed was one strong preseason drive, one clutch moment, and suddenly the headlines could change from arrogant rookie to Cleveland's savior. The dysfunction wasn't a trap, it was an opening. And here's where Shedeur showed his gambler's mindset. Instead of playing it safe with a clipboard on the sidelines of a powerhouse team, he rolled the dice in a city desperate for a quarterback who could finally break the curse. He wasn't running from competition, he was running toward it. In Cleveland, every mistake would be magnified, every play judged, but every opportunity would also be real. And Shedeur wanted real. The media framed it as risky. Critics called it reckless. But Shedeur didn't see risk. He saw leverage. If he could win in Cleveland, he wouldn't just prove the doubters wrong. He'd flip the entire league on its head. And that's exactly what terrified NFL owners. Because if Shedeur's gamble pays off, the days of rookies quietly playing by the old rules would be over. Behind the headlines and media spin, the real story was unfolding in the boardrooms. NFL owners, the men who have controlled the league for generations, were furious. And more importantly, they were scared. For decades, the draft has been their playground. Players sit, wait, and smile while owners decide their fates like kings choosing knights for battle. It's a system built on control, and it has never been challenged. Until Shedeur Sanders. When Cam Newton revealed that Shedeur had rejected multiple franchises, it wasn't just a headline. It was a warning shot. If one rookie quarterback could turn billion-dollar organizations into beggars, what happens when others realize they can do the same? Owners weren't panicking over Shedeur alone. They were panicking about the future, Because Shedeur's defiance wasn't a one-off, it was a blueprint. Imagine an entire generation of rookies walking into draft night not with tears in their eyes, but with leverage in their hands. No more just happy to be here. Instead, they'd say, "No thanks, I'll wait for the right fit." That thought kept owners up at night. It wasn't about arrogance, it was about power. Power shifting away from the billionaires in suits and into the hands of the athletes they've controlled for decades. And don't think this was just about football. It was about culture, branding, and influence. Shedeur Sanders raised his son to understand the business of the game, not just the game itself. Shedeur didn't see himself as cattle being auctioned off. He saw himself as a brand, a businessman, and a competitor. And that mindset is exactly what terrifies the league's old guard. Because once the illusion breaks, once players realize they're not pawns but kings, the entire system begins to crack. And Shedeur Sanders, just on one side, you had the believers. To them, Shedeur wasn't reckless, he was revolutionary. They praised his confidence, calling him a visionary for refusing to bow down to tradition. Finally, they tweeted, a rookie who understands his worth. These fans saw Shedeur as a new symbol of player empowerment, someone rewriting the rules before ever throwing an NFL touchdown. Every rejection of a franchise wasn't arrogance. It was proof he was too smart to get stuck in a dead-end situation. But on the other side, the backlash was just as loud. Old school voices blasted him as entitled, spoiled, and out of touch. Former players like Alex Smith wagged their fingers, arguing that Shedeur was throwing away his shot by turning down teams like Baltimore or Philly. For them, respect wasn't about leverage. It was about humility. They said Shedeur hadn't earned the right to dictate his future and warned that the league would humble him quickly. And in between those two extremes were the undecided fans. People watching the drama play out like a reality show. They didn't know if Shedeur was rewriting history or just writing checks his rookie arm couldn't cash. But one thing was certain. Everybody was watching. This split wasn't just about Shedeur Sanders. It was about a culture clash. Old NFL versus new NFL. The traditionalists wanted rookies to fall in line, smile, and be grateful. The new generation wanted players to claim their worth and control their destinies. Shedeur had become the lightning rod for that entire debate. And while fans argued in comment sections and analysts sparred on live TV, one fact hung over everything. The story wasn't finished. Because if Shedeur succeeded in Cleveland, every critic would be forced to eat their words, and the NFL would never look the same again. When the dust finally settled, one truth remained. Shedeur Sanders had done more than reject 3 franchises. He had cracked open the foundation of the NFL itself. For decades, rookies entered the draft like pieces on a chessboard, moved around at the whim of billionaires in suits. They smiled, shook hands, and signed their lives away, grateful just to be in the room. But with one bold decision, Shedeur flipped the entire board. This wasn't just about Baltimore, Philadelphia, or Cleveland. This was about the system, about the illusion of control that owners had clung to for decades. Shedeur didn't walk into draft night begging for approval. He walked in negotiating. That single act turned him from a rookie prospect into a symbol of a new generation of players who refuse to let their careers be dictated by tradition, politics, or convenience. And that's why Cam Newton's revelation burned so hot. He wasn't just exposing a headline, he was pulling back the curtain on a cultural shift already in motion. For years, players have been building brands, cultivating followings, and realizing their true value goes beyond a contract. Shedeur's draft defiance was simply the moment it exploded into the spotlight. Owners hate it. Analysts argue about it. Fans can't stop debating it. But no matter which side of the fence you're on, the outcome is clear. Shedeur Sanders has forced the NFL to confront a future where rookies don't just take what they're given. They demand what they deserve. Will he be remembered as the revolutionary who rewrote draft history, or as the cautionary tale parents point to when teaching their kids about humility? That part hasn't been written yet. His story in Cleveland is just beginning, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If he shines, he'll validate every decision, every rejection, every headline. If he fails, the critics will bury him under the weight of their "I told you so's." But here's the thing. Revolutions aren't about guarantees. They're about change. And Shedeur Sanders has already changed the conversation. The next time draft night comes around, rookies won't just be thinking about getting picked. They'll be thinking about leverage. They'll be thinking about power. And they'll be thinking about the kid who said no to billionaires and made the NFL sweat. This isn't just a draft story anymore. It's the start of something bigger, something unstoppable. A revolution in cleats.